How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Agave Cactus Talk. Today we're going to be talking about agaves and trees and how you can use agroforestry systems to benefit your farm. So, wanted to provide some examples of trees that I'm using here on the farm, why I'm using them, what products I expect to make out of them, and if it's pertinent, what type of benefits that tree might provide for the general farm's ecosystem and or like soil or chemical balances. So let's start off kind of just counting them off the top of my head. The first tree I can think of is the jelly palm, which is a fruiting palm tree, and it's a very uncommon fruit that's consumed in America, but it's very popular in different places around the world. And it's very sweet. A lot of people say it's like very tart to them, but to me, it was pretty sweet. It does have more tart than other kind of like on the taste than other fruits, but I didn't think it was so bad to the point where people couldn't consume these, right? Like I've been smacking them down, but that tree, it's going to grow higher than other trees. It's going to try to go up, and most of the palm trees, they're going to be getting very tall on you. So I wanted to plant them because, agaves don't really get past, the 10 foot of elevation on a farm. Like they might get, most of them honestly don't get more than just a few feet tall, like 2 to 3 feet tall. But the giant ones could get, 6, 8, 10 feet tall. So the palm tree, such as this jelly palm, date palm, wine palm, different palms I'll be talking about. These are trees that you can plant and they're going to go 50, 60, even 100 feet tall. And, they're not going to be shading out agave, but they're going to be able to lock in water for you when it rains. They're going to be able to provide shade or more sun, depending what you want on the tree. So for all of these trees, the sun or shade is really cool because, over here we might have, 120 Fahrenheit days in the summer, and I want to have some shade on the agave. But then in the winter, we might have down to 25 Fahrenheit nights, and then, in the day it's like 50, like right now. So then I want to put more sun on the agave. So then I might trim that tree right where the agave is planted, and then these agaves I'm planting them some of them at the base of the tree, right? So that they could serve as ground cover and they have like a symbiotic relationship, right? The trees and the agave. And the jelly palm, a lot of people uh, make jams out of it. That's like the number one, I guess, way that it's utilized. That's why it's called the jelly palm. But I also know that you can make, with most of these palm fruits, you can make wine and spirits. So, well, the second one not as uh, explored, but hear me out. So there's date wine, jelly palm wine, and wine from the wine palm, which is another separate fruit. So if you can make wine out of it, you can definitely make spirits out of it. You know what I mean? Because it's just a couple extra steps. But those are distillates that are unique that nobody's messing around with that I think can, provide some unique experiences for the consumers. And then you have consumables in the fruit, right, of the jelly palm. And then this this palm is also locking in a lot of the soil, right? So a lot of the problem here in the desert, your top layer of soil, the top few inches is always either eroding away or you have new sand eroding to that layer, making it very sandy, right? So our soil mix here might be the top few inches a very sandy mix because of that wind situation. But you get down a little bit and it's a clay loam mix. And that's why it retains water. Like any water that hits here, it does not leave pretty much the soil. Like the soil is very smart about how it captures that water. And that's dope because we don't have runoff and stuff, right? So Yeah, the first tree, jelly palm tree, a lot of uses and if you can make jams out of it, you can make juices, you can make different, you know, pies, pastries. You use it in all types of baked goods, right? So there's just the more fruit of it that might be available, the more products that people are going to start messing around with the jelly palm. So my goal with it is just to provide more fruit into the market, utilize a bunch of it myself, experiment with it, and then utilize it as a supplement for agave. So why am I even doing this podcast? Well, a lot of the problems with agave is it's such a long-term crop that us new agave farmers in California, you know, unless you're selling plants like me and you got a bunch of different businesses, you're not making a lot of money for a lot of years, right? So you need stuff like cactus, like fruit trees that can bring you in a annual or a biannual product that you can mess around with and make, like for instance, if your goal is to make agave spirits and you bring that out every couple years, right? Then that's cool. But you might also have a small batch of jelly palm spirits or wine palm or date palm spirits that or wine that you have for your clients on a much smaller quantity. And these are the people that are going to obviously want that product because they're already into alcohol, right? And then people that, you might be selling the agave, the smaller agaves as food or the quiotes, you might want to sell them the raw fruit, right? Because it has a lot of benefits as well. A lot of these fruiting palms. So that's the cool thing behind the jelly palm, right? A lot of cool different things. And as I was mentioning, the next two trees that I have are a wine palm and a jelly palm, or and a wine. What is it called? A wine palm and a date palm. My bad. Fucking mixing it up. So the date palm I have is the most common one, which is the medjool. It's just one that's really large and I like. I'm trying to mix up the diversity of every fruit that I put in here. So with the dates, I have a few of the medjool. Now I'm going to start getting different versions of it, but they're a little bit more harder to find. So I went what I could find first. But the medjool date, if you've ever been to Indio, California, or anywhere in the Coachella Valley, there's actually a lot of dates that are grown in California. I'm not sure on the exact percentage, but I'm pretty sure the majority of California's dates come out of this region. But Lancaster can grow dates, Palmdale could grow dates, the whole Antelope Valley could grow dates. So, I believe that dates and wine palms will, you know, expand their markets into these parts of the desert, in Riverside deserts, all of that. Just because you know, people want to see, like for instance, right now with all the water situations around California, people are having to try to pick crops that are like agave, right? Like cactus that are going to be using very little water, right? So if you can water your date tree and then at the same time, the agaves and cactus around it live off that water, you see where I'm going? Your goal is to use the water once, but to get 10 different plants to utilize that water. You get me? So you want to be planting stuff symbiotically that could be close to each other, working in parallel, right? So the dates, obviously, like I told you, everybody loves them. There's already a proven market for that, actually, unlike the wine palm and the jelly palm, because they're shipping it all over the world, shipping it all over California and the U.S., making, good money. So my goal is not to compete with them. My goal is just to offer as an add-on product to when people are buying plants or fruits or whatever from me. Oh, you want some dates too? I got them, you know? So I'm not trying to plant like hundreds or thousands of those trees. I'm just trying to, once again, show you what different trees could be planted with the agave and what different uses you could get out of them, right? So the date and wine palm or the date palm is going to be just like the jelly palm, locking in soil, having less erosion in between the spaces where you have all your agave and cactus growing up. Because you want to have them on equal spacing, right? So say my agave Americana, I might plant them on 12-foot spacing. So I want to harvest them with excavators when they're large as fuck, 15, 20 years old. That means there's a lot of erosion, right? If I don't have the ground cover there or something there. So I keep the native plants like the grasses and the brushes, but then the goats maintain that very low. So I'm able to plant other stuff like trees and, you know, in between the natives and the agave cactus that I'm farming. The date palm, like I mentioned, you can make wine out of it, which implies that you can make spirits out of it. It's something also that could be used in all types of pastries and bakery stuff. And, you know, the problem with the dates, much like the jelly palm, is just that there's just this small region in California growing them, and they grow a fuck ton of them, but it's not so significant like oranges or strawberries or whatever, right? To where they're making thousands and thousands of different products. And that's what you really need for each of these little niche industries. You need entrepreneurs. And that's why I want you to start thinking about yourself, how you can be an entrepreneur, right? If you're going to be producing agave and cactus, like try to make a, product that allows you to be vertically integrated to get the majority of that money, right? Because if you're just shipping a commodity out, no matter if it's dates, no matter if it's agave, cactus, or whatever, you're not going to be making a lot of money as a farmer. Most of those farmers, whenever the market goes a little upside down, they get screwed and they're out of business. So, why do I sell the plants? Why do I make my own fruit products? Why do I do all of that stuff? Because I keep all the money. I'm doing the deliveries, shipping them out myself. I'm, canning stuff myself. I'm picking shit myself. Like that means all the money stays with the farm. If you're selling it off to distributors, if you're selling it off to all these different people in the middle, you're not going to keep the money, right? Like I'm sure you've seen lots of little statistics, right? Where they say like, I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but they're like, oh, 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents of whatever dollar you spend on meat or dairy or whatever goes to the farmer. That's because of the shit I'm telling you right now. All these people in the middle taking the money that should be going to the farmers. So don't do that. You as a small farmer, you don't have that liberty of making that dumb decision. Make some products, focus on shit that you like. If, you're a woman and you like creams and skincare and all types of that shit, and you want to grow cactus, maybe don't focus so much like how I am on the jams. Focus on selling the seed oils at high value, or focus selling or making your own skincare line or making your own makeup or whatever the fuck. You get me? Point is, choose something you like and figure out how whatever you're growing is to fit in there, right? So I already eat a lot of fruits and stuff. That's why it's easy for me to sell jams and, shit like that. But getting to the wine palm, this is another palm that nobody really fucks with. It's more of a specialty palm. People really don't even know what the fuck the wine palm is. Let me see if I could bring up the actual, thing for it, because the Latin name for it, so you can know exactly what it is. It's Jubea chilensis. That's the wine palm. And then you got, let me tell you what the date palm is. I mean, that one's more common, but the latter name is important because there's so many different dates. So Phoenix dactylifera is going to be the more common one, which people know, which is the medjool, which I've planted. And then the jelly palm, I think is a Butia. Let me see. Jelly palm. Yes, Butia capitata. So, all of these are different subsects of palms, but they're all palms, and they come from different areas. But the jelly palm, the wine palm, and date palm are three palms that I've seen could take extremes very well. So they could take the cold, they could take the heat, they could take the wind, they could take, even if a fire rips through, they're gonna fucking survive. They'll burn up all their leaves, but they'll be good. They're just really, really strong trees, and they're actually not even fucking trees. Like they're palms, right? It just, we classify them as trees, or we don't classify them as trees. Like people identify them as trees. Let me say it correctly, right? They identify them as trees because most people don't take botany and know what the fuck the difference between a tree and a palm and, stuff like that is, right? So, like for instance, with certain cacti, they grow into trees, but they're not trees. I mean, they're just cacti. But once again, people don't take, like I took botany in college, and I'm like, made me realize like how much nobody knows what they're reporting on when they talk about plants. Just, people misidentify stuff so much, but that's why when I try to tell you guys stuff, I'll always, have the Latin name in my back pocket so I could I could tell you exactly which one it is because the nicknames, yeah, I mean, they there's nicknames that are on 50 different plants, the same nickname, and then there's like, one nickname that might be applied to a whole bunch of different locales. And then one other person over here says it's a completely different thing with that nickname. So go for the Latin name when fucking you're trying to research a lot of plants and shit, right? So those are the three palms that I'm focusing on right now. I'm trying to get in different types of palms. Like I know there's, you know, dozens of different date palms. So my goal right now, I really love dates. They're expensive as hell. It's a really good market add-on for selling as a small farm. So I'm just gonna focus on finding different species of dates right now. But I'm sure that's the case also with jelly palm and wine palm. So hopefully I can start diversifying that species on my farm as well. The palms as well, like I mentioned, they not only help keep water in, the soil, but they start, breeding in between their roots a lot of little fungi that allow for, other plants to thrive around them. Like if you have ever been driving around LA and you see plants literally growing out of the palm tree root, it's like something so cool, right? That doesn't happen with other trees. They kind of push out other plants. Like if you try to plant, for instance, grass right at the trunk where an oak tree is, all of that shit will die. So it's interesting. The palm tree, you can literally put it right up to the trunk and nothing will happen. Like you can plant cacti pad right in between its roots and it'll grow. It's so dope. And it won't affect the palm tree. That's the other thing, right? Like the other thing with these palm trees, right? I know I haven't been talking about the agave cactus as much as I'm focusing on the trees and their relationship and why I have them on my cactus farm. But here's the thing, like these palm trees because they grow vertically, you can also grow stuff like passion fruit on them. You can grow different types of fruiting vines like blackberries, raspberries, different types of stuff to get an even more product out of that. You can use the trunk as a growing system, right? Because now you're going vertically on your farm and utilizing the space vertically. So that's why I try to tell people it's like I love permaculture, regenerative, all these different words, but the word that I would love to tell people that a lot of people don't really understand is ecosystem farm. I'm trying to create an ecosystem farm, right? Like the Amazon or like, California pre-colonialism. It's like the Native Americans, they created these food forests, these herb forests, these medicine forests and ecosystems that were pretty much, maintained by them, but sustainable. They could go on potentially forever without them. They just were always making it better, right? So it's crazy now we're starting to figure all this out, stuff that I, had believed forever that nature really isn't nature. You know what I mean? It was influenced like by humans, like the whole Amazon and most of California was planted out or managed by these indigenous people, and they selectively cut down what was good or not for them, right? Like they kept the herbs that were their medicines, they kept the trees that gave them fruit. Here in California, a large portion of the indigenous diet was acorns. That's why you see oak trees freaking everywhere because they were planting them everywhere so that as they were moving, they always had food, you know? And the same thing you you should try to do when you're planting your farm out. Create an ecosystem. Have ground cover, have grasses for the animal, have trees, have shrubs, and then one day you might die and that shit will still keep going. That's why I love that word permaculture because for me it means a permanent culture, right? A permanent ecosystem. So that word ecosystem farm, start to get to know it because that's what you want. When you go to nature, you see this shit just functioning, right? And that's what you want your farm to become. You don't want it to become this highly maintenance monster that just fucks you up, day and night. Like I try to, the more I do on the farm, create actually less work for myself. So, you know, that's how the indigenous thought about a lot of that stuff. And you know, you gotta learn from them. But let's move on to the next tree. So my next tree is going to be Palo Verde, which I have three different species of. And Palo Verde belongs to the legume family. And the legume family are really specific or really interesting trees because they allow for, the basically they're like fertilizer trees if you want to simplify it. They basically allow fungi to exist in their root systems that are sequestrating, you know, fertilizers into the soil or adding fertilizers into the soil. So these trees essentially, the Palo Verde, sorry, I had to pause for my goats. They were getting a little too far. What I was saying is that these trees, they basically are fertilizer trees and they're putting in, nitrogen into the soil. So they're fixating it into the soil by harboring all these fungi, right? Woo, I had to chase those. Let me catch my breath. And then these fungi and bacteria are exchanging, the nitrogen that's in the soil that they fixate with the plant roots. So this is where a lot of the misconception comes in. People think like if you apply fertilizer, the plant could just readily absorb it. Most of the problem is usually that we apply fertilizers like nitrogen fertilizers in a way that, or in a chemical fashion that, it's not available to the plant. They need nitrogen in certain chemical compounds. So you can, for instance, apply ammonia that is a highly concentrated version of nitrogen, and they might not like it. It might actually burn them or kill them. So what these trees do is fixate the nitrogen slowly into the soil, and the plant roots can do, small relationships with these bacteria and fungi where they interchange sugars and then they get the nitrogen. So people, for instance, say, oh, the plant is uptaking the nitrogen. And that's actually not so simple, right? Like the plant has to exchange with the soil microbial to get that nitrogen, and it has to provide sugars or something of value, right? So even if you have, for instance, a super concentrated amount of nitrogen in your soil that you applied, if your soil is a piece of shit, it doesn't matter. It's not going to absorb it. So that's why these trees are really good because, it does the nitrogen fixation in a form that the plant can absorb that nitrogen, right? Because it's harboring and creating a ecosystem in the soil that allows for the for these bacteria and fungi to prosper. So if the tree wasn't there, not only would the nitrogen not be available as readily, but the ability for that plant itself to get the fertilizer in the nitrogen form would be much, much less. So you not only add fertilizer to your farm by, nitrogen fertilizer to your farm by adding a Palo Verde tree or an acacia or a mesquite, but you also are adding your plant's ability to absorb whatever is actually in the soil. So it's going to grow much faster. It's going to grow much stronger. And once again, a Palo Verde is going to be much like those dates and other fruiting palms I told you about. They're going to get high as fuck and not be in that growing zone where your agave and your cactus is, right? They're also going to, be evergreen. So you're year round going to be able to trim them for, doing that extra sun or extra shade. But here I have a bunch of goats, I have a bunch of birds. They eat the Palo Verde. So the Palo Verde is very nutritious tree, you know, and, there's different versions of them. So I have the Mexican Palo Verde, which is, let me see what species it is. Because these Palo Verdes, once again, the Latin names are so freaky, I don't remember them, you know. Give me 1 second. Let me look for it real quick. So I found it. So the Mexican Palo Verde, it's Parkinsonia aculeata. My God. And its other nickname, besides what I call it, Mexican palo verde, is Jerusalem thorn because it has thorns. So the other palo verde that I have here, the other two are from, are spineless, which are the blue palo verde and the desert museum palo verde. So let me see what the desert museum palo verde species is exactly. A lot of people don't use the Latin name, so it's always taken me a while to find it. I don't know why they don't start off with that name, you know. It's Parkinsonium times Desert Museum. That makes no sense. I guess it's basically like a fucking cultivar of a Arizona wild Palo Verde. So the Desert Museum I like a lot because I think they chose it because it just provides a shit ton of yellow flowers, like more so than the wild versions. But obviously for my goats, they love the flowers because they're really high in protein and stuff. So, they eat the tree and the flowers, year-round food for them. They can get pretty tall. I mean, I've seen some of these trees, 50, 60 feet tall, but I'm going to try to keep them around 30, 40 feet tall because I don't want them to get too large on me to where it becomes an issue trimming, you know? So I don't want to be bringing in like bucket cranes and shit, but maybe I'll have to actually now that I think of it because of the fruiting palms. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe we just get ourselves a little bucket that we could just have for the farm to harvest all the tall trees. But yeah, this other one, the blue Palo Verde that I mentioned. What is this one? Or not the blue. Did I say blue Palo Verde? I meant the Arizona Palo Verde. There's another Palo Verde called the blue Palo Verde though. The Arizona Palo Verde is called. It should be like Parkinsonian or something too, but nah, it's Cercidium microphyllum. That's insane. So yeah, it's in another whole little category because the other ones are Parkinsonian. So yeah, the Cercidium microphyllum is, I think, the strongest of the three actually. And as far as like how it's affected by the cold and stuff. And I mean, that kind of makes sense to me, to be honest, because the Mexican Palo Verde obviously is in much more temperate places. I mean, Sonora's pretty fucked and stuff in Chihuahua, but it's like, I mean, it's not as bad as fucking Utah and Arizona. So it has a slightly better cold tolerance. Like my Mexican Palo Verdes right now are turning purple, whereas the Arizona Palo Verdes are completely fine growing, don't give a fuck. The Mexican Palo Verdes are a little bit faster growing. They grew like 4 feet this year, 3, 4 feet, some of them. Whereas the Arizona Palo Verde, I'm getting like 2, 3 feet out of it a year, which admittedly I'm not watering it a lot, but as well with the Mexican Palo Verde. So yeah, I guess I've seen those, for instance, the Desert Museum and the Arizona Palo Verde grow faster over there in LA because they water them. But I also don't know if that's due to the more temperate climate, like crazy hotter and shit most of the year. So not sure. Any more research there. But yeah, these Palo Verdes, my goal with them is to plant a bunch of them throughout the agave field, cactus fields to help out in the sun in the summer and then cut them up. And when the forage is low in the winter, I can provide that feed to the goats because then I'm going to be wanting to put more sun on my ground cover plants, which are the agave and the cactus, right? So the Palo Verde is also a great addition. You know, Palo Verdes also produce edible seed pods, which are really, really high in protein, really, really good. You know, once again, another indigenous crop that's kind of been forgotten or lost or whatever. The flowers are edible, really good shit. I've also for instance, like seen a lot of people distill mesquite pods, and I'm pretty sure you could distill Palo Verde pods like the same way. It just got to play a little bit with the recipe, but a lot of these leguminous trees, their seeds are just so packed, with like they're the most nutrient or the densest nutrients on the plant actually. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. Like I don't know if that carries through to everything like with moringa and stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised, you know, 'cause a lot of the legumes I see, the seeds are the most, nutrient dense part, like I mentioned. So that's another little fun fact. Let me try to think real quick if there's anything else I want to tell you on the Palo Verdes. But I think that's it, you know. They're really, really strong trees as far as being drought tolerant. Like past the second and third year, once they reach about 6, 7 feet tall, you can't forget about them, but I just say almost. You know what I mean? Like I water them once a month sometimes with like the shittiest goat water, and they're so happy, man. And then other ones like I've completely forgot about them already that they're like 3 or 4, and they're giant already. They're like fucking 15 feet tall, and I'm trimming them to try to keep them lower and provide that forage for my goats. It's interesting, but you know, yeah. Let's get to the next tree here. I don't make this a 5-hour podcast. So the next one I want to talk to you guys about is the mulberry. So the mulberry is a fruit that a lot of people probably don't know. I have the Pakistani mulberry, and there's a lot of different species of mulberries, but why I chose Pakistani mulberry is that it's a dwarf tree that also, like it doesn't get taller than like, I think 12 feet, 15 feet tall, but it also doesn't have a tremendous amount of foliage, and it provides a lot of fruit, so the fruit's really expensive. Like if you ever go to a co-op and buy a bag of mulberries, oh my God, I mean, you got to put a fucking down payment on it or something, that's like, it's like Goldie berries, like $20 or $50 a pound sometimes. But they're so nutritious, they're so good for you. And I don't understand why more people don't grow them in California. Unlike the dates, but similar to the jelly palm and the wine palm and the Palo Verde seeds, this is a market that's more niche that you're going to have to explore. But because of that, you're going to be able to demand much higher prices and stuff, right? So, if you could sell your mulberries, for instance, at $10 a pound and have that as an added value crop that your little small farm is able to sell to clients as you're selling them, different prickly pears from your cacti or different, small agave that they might want to consume, like say a dessert tea or something, whatever. Quiotes from different stuff, flowers. It's just an added value crop, you know. And then, so the Pakistani mulberry is that dwarf version, but then I also have a another mulberry that I'm unsure of the species, but it was sold to me, and the guy told me he said they're male mulberries and they don't produce fruit, but they grow tall as hell and they produce a lot of shade. And I was like, you got a picture of it, when I was buying it, I'm like, you got a picture. And he sent me a picture of this tree in his front yard that he propagated these from. And I'll get to that right now, by the way. But so he propagated this tree, all these trees that I bought from him. And the tree he has at his house is a 60-foot monster, like by 40 or 50 feet wide. And I was like, with one of those, I could feed all my goats. So I bought a bunch of them. I mean, I think I've got 4 of them here. And then, I bought those 4 knowing what he did is something that I was going to do, which is in winter, like right now, cut some of the branches, keep them humid and moist until spring when they bring out new buds. And, you can make your own trees, So with the mulberry and with the figs, you can make your own trees just off the sticks. It's pretty cool. Kind of like a wine grape in that sense, You just get yourself a little, 1 inch little stick, 6 to 8 inches tall, and some rooting hormone. Keep that in a cool environment, and you got yourself a little tree. A couple weeks. Start putting out roots. It's cool. You can also put it in a water of or a vase of just straight water. Put all the sticks in there in like your kitchen, and when the roots pop out, plant it in the ground. I don't have fig trees here, but fig trees is actually, now that I'm thinking about it, a really good option as well to add to your desert agave cactus farm. Like what I'm trying to go towards here is producing lots of fruit that is just like agave and cactus that don't need a lot of water, you know? Actually, agave technically is a fruit too. A lot of people think it's like like, like what, like it's like a pineapple. You know what I mean? So technically, when you refer to a field of agave, it's an orchard. Just like an orchard of oranges. But I don't know why. It's kind of like the tomato being confused for a vegetable thing. Conspiracy. But yeah, so these mulberries, the two different types I have are really, really cool species. I have a fruiting one, and then I have one more for the forage, which grows a little quicker. So once again, trees that are very drought tolerant, much like everything I've talked about today. They're trees that you could plant in tandem with your agave and cactus at the bases, and they're going to be able to integrate into your agroforestry, into your silviculture system, providing food for your animals, right? So that's why the mulberries are dope. And then on the product side of it, it's like the mulberries, a lot of people don't, like I mentioned, sell mulberries. So that's why they're super expensive, but even less so mulberry products, right? So, I mean, not only can you make good money selling the fruit with a lot of these niche fruit products, but you make a mulberry jam, sell a little baby jam for $20, man. I mean, you know, if it does not exist and you're the first in your area to have this local stuff, you can pretty much put whatever price you want on it. And I'm not saying go out there and scam people, you know what I mean? Like I give you an example. I sell my stuff at pretty good prices, like a lot of the niche products they're I would say affordable, but I also provide different, ways of buying stuff. So I might give a small jar that a small family can buy of jam for $5. And then if a rich family comes and tells me, oh, I want a whole bunch of jam, then I might sell them a big ass jar of jam, for like 50, right? So it's like, uh, just because it's a niche, expensive product doesn't mean that you only have to sell to rich people or try to scam everybody. Make smaller versions of your jams or your products or your juices, whatever the hell you're going to make with this fruit, and offer that to the small or to the poor and the middle class. And then the rich people, yeah, they can buy in bulk or whatever, or they can buy, different things that are a little bit more niche. You know what I mean? Like say you make some mulberry candy or some mulberry truffles or something that might be a little bit more niche for a rich person to buy and pay that extra price, but you have the jams available at affordable rates for these small people to buy, right? Hang on, set Shaver! The little babies who get lost because they fall asleep and then their mama's looking for them screaming. So yeah, the mulberries is a really cool one. Okay. Sorry if I can phased out because somebody texted me. I have to read their message because it looked important. But yeah, the mulberries really legit shit, man. Fucking let's get over to another tree. A lot of these trees, by the way, research them yourselves. I'm just kind of doing, off the top of my head shit, but the mulberries probably provide a lot of soil benefits too, that I'm not mentioning. And what I do, what I mention is about a lot of these fruit trees, like olive, mulberry, you know, the goats love them. You know what I mean? So the leaves of fruiting trees are loved over shrubs and loved over a lot of different plants that I give to the goats, right? Cactus is just about one of their favorites because it's full of water, protein, fiber. But yeah, stuff like mulberries, olives, they don't fall too far behind that cactus. They love it. Sorry, I had to chase my goats again. What I was saying is that the leaves of the fruit trees are one of the, you know, things that the goats just love, more than other stuff. Cactus, not as much, but or not as much as cactus, but overall the other trees and shrubs. So let's get back to the trees here, and all of these trees I have here at the farm. So I mean, I could go on all day and probably write a book about this, about what trees can go well if you're agave and cactus, and a lot of it's going to depend on where you're at and what are your goals. So, um, take that into account as well. This is more of a primer for you to realize how I'm using the trees and how you can use different trees, even if they're not these trees. So the next one I want to get into is pomegranates. So pomegranates is one that, I mean, shit, the wonderful family or the wonderful company owns the large majority of the pomegranates being grown. They control the market. So I really wouldn't get into growing a large commercial amount of pomegranates. I just have a pomegranate tree here so that I could have pomegranates for my family and make some add-on, once again, products, like I said, of pomegranates. So I might have some pomegranate jams that already have been working on and they sell well. And then, I eat them, obviously, I sell them, but then I'm also going to be trying to work on making maybe my own bread here, certain products that I can incorporate pomegranate into, like, making pies and stuff. So the pomegranate, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative just because, like I said, it's such a dominant force in agriculture that is the majority of that market. So, that's something that hopefully never happens to another crop. But yeah, the pomegranates, like I would advise against going all in on or whatever, but they're a really good crop nonetheless, very drought tolerant. You know, they aren't evergreen, so they drop their leaves when it gets cold. So, whatever agaves you have around them, they're going to be getting extra sunlight, whether you like it or not, in the winter, which is good. But all year you could trim that tree, provide forage for your animals, provide forage, not forage, what did I mean? Mulch for your soil. So a lot of these trees, for instance, one thing I highly recommend if you don't have animals is to start boosting all your soils. Start getting all your soils and ready. Get, for instance, you know, used to the chop and drop method. Get used to these different methods of utilizing that tree waste, right? So if you have some really poor soil like I do here in the desert, if I didn't have animals, I'd be chopping and dropping all of that green waste onto the ground right where the tree is at and using that as my plant in place mulch so that it can hold a lot of the water. It can hold a lot of the, you know, what am I trying to say here? It could prevent a lot of the sun rays from evaporating the water by hitting the ground. So, even if you don't have ground cover, if you have mulch, it provides that one purpose of the ground cover, which is to cover the ground. So the pomegranates, not as excited about those as other trees because I can't really explore the crap out of them. But what I will say is you could try different genetics. You know what I mean? So you could try different pomegranate trees that aren't the genetics that are all grown in California, you know? So pomegranate trees are from like the Middle East and stuff. I mean, go find these selective pomegranate tree genetics and grow those. And then, yeah, maybe just like every other thing I mentioned here, you can make your own niche products that could be very highly valued and you can grow a bunch of the trees if you want. But if you're going to be doing like what I did and putting in wonderful trees, don't plant thousands and thousands of them because probably not going to go so well for you when you're trying to sell that at a wholesale because there is a lot of pomegranate grown here in Kern County. So, Kern County, it's a straight desert, same climate as here as the land. A lot of people don't know, though, that they're the number one agricultural county in the United States. So they grow most of the citrus, the pomegranates, the nuts, and yeah, a lot of billions of dollars coming out of there. And that's why I tell people it's like the only people that see the desert is, something that they can't farm is a lot of these Americans. But you got immigrant families coming into California and buying up all of it and getting fucking, launched into the billionaire class. So don't sleep on the desert, man. Don't sleep on the desert. There's a big reason why I bought a bunch of it and partially to conserve it, but definitely to develop a lot of it. And there's a lot you can do with it. I mean, there's thousands of crops that you can potentially grow in the desert that can make you a lot of money. Trees, the Agave Cacti are just some of the ones that's starting here because it's what I'm familiar with. So the next tree I want to talk to you guys about is going to be olive trees. So with the olive trees, there's a lot of different olive trees that you could try, right? So the olive trees that I have here are the more drought tolerant olive trees, which are Arbequina and Manzanillo. So Manzanillo is a olive tree from Spain, I believe, and let me see if I remember correctly, but yeah. So the Manzanillos are from Spain, and then the Arbequina. I don't remember if that's from France or from. I think that one's from somewhere in Italy. I don't remember correctly. You could Google it, but these aren't the only two types of olives that I want to put in here. Also want to put in some Francio, some Mission. These are two varieties that I believe I really want to focus on. You know, there's a lot of olive grown in California, so don't choose the most commercial variety, obviously. Go for varieties that people aren't really messing with, like Manzanillo and, like I mentioned, Mission, right? So I have Manzanillo olive trees here in Arbequina, but I'm trying to get these other ones. And that way I could provide as an add-in product as well, olive oil. So I want to be able to press my own olive oil, not only for my own consumption, but for the consumption of all my consumers. And to do that, I'm going to need some olive trees. So yeah, that's what I'm focusing on there. I also want to be able to partner with Guatemalan and Central American kitchens to provide them with olives that are more attuned to our, how can we say it, flavors. So olives are used a lot, for instance, like in Guatemala or El Salvador tamales. And, the olives that we have for selection are obviously olives that were bred for Europe. You get me? So they're bred for a lot of European cuisine stuff, not Latin American. So I'm trying to use different olives that are more aligned with our flavorings, right? So the olives that I'm choosing are a little bit different in taste than the stuff you'd find in the store, which means they're also going to press a different olive oil, which once again, if you're creating niche products like niche olive oils that aren't on the shelf and you can show people that it's pure, that's the big thing right now in olive oil. I mean, most of the shit on the store shelves is not pure, you know. There was a huge scandal a little bit back where Italy was found, a lot of their stuff being imported here to be cut, olive oil. And then a lot of the olive oils here aren't pure olive oils. So if you're able to sell an actual pure olive oil and you're actually using niche olives, you're going to be making some good money with that. I definitely recommend that because it's a drought tolerant tree. Once again, like all these other trees, can help with the sun or shade. Like I was mentioning with the mulberries, I mean, it might be a lot of soil benefits that I'm unaware of at the moment because I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but I definitely know that there is some. And a lot of these trees, when they're added, provide a lot of benefits. So, yeah, the olives have a lot of potential for selling them raw, for selling them to different companies, like I mentioned, to use them in their products that they're making. And if you want to sell a product directly to consumer that you can, profit more from, then press your own olive oil. You can buy a small press, for, I mean, I don't know, probably 500, less than 1,000, and go classic if you want and make a fucking Tahona. And because, people think like that concept of Tahona is just a Mexican concept, but the Italians have stuff that looks just like Tahonas that they've been using to press olive oil for thousands of fucking years as well. So, you know, uh, yeah, that is something that is around the world. You get me? They don't call it Tahona, but I mean, I've seen it, and how they press the olive oil on a small farm is pretty much similar to a lot of the presses that I see in Mexico for agaves. So that was interesting to me actually because you could build a press, for instance, that is for your olive, but at the same time utilize that, say, at a small scale to press maybe agave juice out of an agave, or to press fresh cane juice out of a Agave Cactus, or you might want to use it to press juice out of a prickly pear. You get me? So try to, if you're gonna already spend mad money on equipment for what do you call it for one side of your business, but make sure that that applies to a lot of different sides of your business, right? So that way you can get more money out of everything, man. Give me 1 second. I'm putting the goats down and they're just being fucking razors. Once, my bad. It gets chaotic when I'm putting the corn to try to get the goats in. Shit, you think a goat loves you? Put some corn in front of you, they'll fucking slit your throat. Like, give a fuck how long you've had that goat. If some corn is in front of them, they'll tackle the hell out of you. So always be cautious around goats and corn. But yeah, lots of really interesting trees that can, serve as a extremely helpful thing for your agave and cactus farm.
So another thing is that, the olive press you can use for different types of fruits and vegetables to make different types of juices that you might want to, that there's a multi-purpose tool, right? The next tree I wanted to, well, let me tell you real quick actually about the olives. The goats love eating them. It's probably their favorite fruit tree that, most people don't assume that goats love, but they love, so that's one of the trees that, I could see myself putting 100 or, 500 olive trees. As I mentioned, there is an olive industry in California that's pretty prosperous. So I probably wouldn't be trying to compete with them if I'm a small farm. I'm going to be focusing on niche varieties, more using the olive trees for helping the agave and cactus and the goats. So, the next tree I wanted to get to is another tree that I have, the Arizona ash tree. And the Arizona ash tree is another one of those trees that helps boost a lot of the soil microbiome. It helps plants absorb and grow nutrients and water better and grow better. So it's a tree native to Arizona, hence the name Arizona ash tree. But it's a tree that gets ginormous. It can get 60 foot wide, 80 foot tall. I see a lot of them in that 50, 60 foot range in LA. But it's another tree that's extremely drought tolerant. It's going to provide forage for your goats, provide mulch for your soils. It's going to also be able to drop its leaves in winter like the pomegranates and allow your agave and cactus to get extra added sunlight, while also providing, some shade cover in the summers when they're super intense. All around, really good tree. The Arizona ash tree was actually the first tree I planted at my farm, and hundreds have died in between that. A lot of the trees that I brought here are just trees from the landscaping trade in LA, but in LA, a lot of the climates over there in the cities to the south of the LA forest do not get under 40 Fahrenheit. So a lot of the shit when I bring it here, we got down to 14 Fahrenheit this year. Our traditional low the past 5 years was 18 to 20 Fahrenheit. So, that most of them died, trees that I ripped out of people's yards and brought them over here. But the Arizona ash is actually one that I bought from a Home Depot here in Lancaster, and it lived. And, now it's like 8 feet tall. So, I'm sure if you water the crap out of it, it grows faster, but it could be put into a dry farm system like mine and prosper pretty well. Like it doesn't need a lot of water or a lot of extra care compared to other trees. I think mine is maybe growing a little bit slow because of the water situation. So if you do dry farm it, just realize it's probably going to be like half or a quarter of the growth rate of one that's on an irrigation system. But I'm okay with that because, as I mentioned, it's not my only tree, and I have lots of different other trees. This is going to be more of a shade tree, so it's going to be more useful for the animals and for boosting soil. I really enjoy how the Arizona ash tree looks. It just had, like, because I'm an arborist, I can shape it into like that lollipop look and make it really beautiful. So that's also why aesthetically I want to plant a few of the Arizona ash trees because they are very, very large trees. You also have to remember these trees are going to sequester a lot of carbon, clean the air around you. So I'm trying to get some big trees in because there is a lot of dust and airborne particles in the air. I want these big trees to help me clean up the air on the farm that I'm breathing. So that's one of the big intentions behind the Arizona ash tree. It's such a monster of a tree that it's going to just provide a lot of food and a lot of air cleaning for the farmer. So that one doesn't provide any fruit. Maybe I'll explore what I can do with the seeds, but definitely going to be propagating that one out for people because it is an Arizona native tree. So it does very, very well in any of the southwestern states with hot or cold or wind or any of these extreme desertic climates. And, it's not native to California, but it's a tree that can, fit into xeriscaping, into drought tolerant gardens here, no problem, and because it is from Arizona, it's a tree that, is a little bit more resistant to fire and it can take it without dying, much like an oak tree. So really cool one, which brings me to the other tree that these I actually only have seedlings of on the farm, but I have a bunch of trees in a greenhouse that I'm going to start bringing over that are 5 and 15 gals, and they're California live oaks. And I basically propagated them out from my oak tree that's in my house in Altadena, and all of these acorns, started them out, and they've been growing well for me. Oak is a very, very slow growing tree, but it's a tree that, really, really boosts the soil when you plant them. It helps a lot of, other plants live. But the problem with the oak tree is you can't plant stuff right up next to it because it also secretes like toxins that, it boosts a lot of the soil up, but then right next door to it, it doesn't like other plants next to it. So it also doesn't allow, a lot of the ground cover to prosper. You could plant other strong trees next to it and they'll grow, but you'll have poor growth out of ground covers by putting them under that oak tree. But the oak tree is a really, really unique tree because it's a native here to California, growing all over. And like I was mentioning, the indigenous people used it for shit. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was like 75% or 80% of their diet was like acorns. And today we don't really eat acorns in California, even though oak trees are everywhere. So that's something I want to explore, trying to bring back, powdered acorn so that people can cook with it and utilize it in different products. I'm trying to create, raw acorns packages that I could ship out to people so that they could plant different oak trees. A lot of California native landscaping is getting a boost, through fires or through the drought or through all types of different ways. So I believe that growing a bunch of oak trees isn't a bad idea for a small farm. It's a tree that everybody wants around California. A 24-gallon tree could be, sometimes $800 because they take so long to grow. So if you throw a bunch of acorns in the ground and in 5 to 10 years, you have, tens of thousands of dollars worth of value of potted oak trees. I mean, it's not a bad investment. They take minimal water, they're drought tolerant, they're fire resistant, they could burn everything around them and they won't die. I proved that this week because my house in Altadena burned down. The only thing there is the fucking oak tree. It's amazing, that tree can survive a hailstorm like that. But yeah, the oak trees, as a food crop is something that I believe more people need to explore. And, you can't just go out and be harvesting public oak trees. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't probably do it, but you need permits to be harvesting public land. And, if they're on people's land, you obviously need permission. So it's like, you need a bunch of oak trees on your farm so that you can make acorn products and sell acorns, grow a bunch of acorns into trees. So I think the oaks, because I run a big nursery out of the farm or out of a different farm, but I collectively just see all my mini farms here in Lancaster is just one farm. But because I grow a bunch of them already, I'm making good money on them. So, if you're a small farm, it's a plant I highly recommend for you to intersperse in between your agave cactus, as well as growing them out so that you might sell them into the landscaping trade. Because a 5 gallon oak tree, because it's long, it takes a long time to grow. It's a California native. I mean, you could get 50, $100, $150 for it. If you're planting it out, obviously it's going to be way more because, landscapers take a $10 plant, and when you go plant it, because they have to go get it, they have to plant it, all that, they're usually selling that plant in 20, $25. So it's like, that's the other thing to make a little bit of money through maybe growing some of these trees that are native on your farm. You can go plant them for people and make more money, right? Become a landscaper, you could say, or a gardener, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I always have told people I think gardeners and landscapers are basically just farmers in the city. They just do it on a small micro scale. And it's interesting now because, with polyculture and everything, how I'm trying to make my farm and build it up now. I'm trying to copy a lot of the stuff I learned in gardening, right? Of like, when you show up to a garden, it's rare to see, okay, if you show up to my house in Altadena, there was like 100 different fruit trees, 200 different vegetables. It was like a crazy ecosystem of value, right? You never show up to a garden and it's like 200 fucking banana trees or 200 fucking avocado trees. Never, right? You show up and there's a couple avocados, there's a couple citrus, there's a couple guavas, there's a couple of everything, right? If they had a good gardener that knew a bunch like me or whatever. So my point is, try to look at your farm like a garden. You know what I mean? Put a little bit of everything because say the prices of how I was mentioning, one product might go down. You have 50 other products that, aren't going to be affected. So you need to realize diversification is the way to go. Especially if you're a small farm, you might want to say, oh, I want to throw all my focus into just growing agave. And then what if the agave doesn't pan out for you? You're fucked, right? I'm growing agave cactus, palms, fruit trees, shrubs, all in tandem. Like, the native landscaping, the creosote shrubs, I cut them down and everything nice that grows back, it's all nice and green. That's what I sell for people to make, essential oils to use for different types of products that they're using creosote for. People using it for skin products, all types of crap. And it surprises me. But my point is, everybody, when they come develop a land here, they just bulldoze everything. Whereas I use the grass for my goats. I use the creosote to make money to feed my goats. I use the rabbit brush. I sell the seeds. You get me? Find use out of all your plants around you, and plant plants that you could get use out of, right? So I'm using the native, and then whatever I'm planting, I'm also finding uses of. I'm not gonna just fucking plant something that doesn't give me something back to the farm, right? Like I give you an example. Like I always gave shit to my dad about a hedge that we had in the front that was just a Japanese privet hedge, and I'm like, that thing, all it is forage for the goats. It doesn't provide any fucking food for us. It doesn't provide any value that we can sell and make money from besides feed the goats. And I told him forever, I'm like, let's tear this shit down and let's build a passion fruit wall, concrete wall with trellising, steel trellising system where you could have passion fruit. Then once again, you could feed the goats or whatever, but then you have now fruit that you could sell. You can make jams and juices and sell, right? So if you're going to put something in your garden or your farm, make sure that it's going to provide value for you monetarily, for your animals, all that. Try to find as many uses out of each plant that you put, right? I was even explaining you to grow the passion fruit on the fucking trunks of trees if you are a good maintenance manager. It's like, be smart with what you're planting, right? But yeah, oak trees, I mean, they're native all over the United States. And, you could grow different varieties that, say you plant in your farm, the California live oak, or if you're on the coast of California live oak, it's like you might notice that there's different white oaks or different oak trees that are all over the East Coast that, look at North Carolina. It's not just Altadena that got ravaged by fire in LA. North Carolina's over there getting marked by floods, and they just got their whole like state just whacked by this flood and they're as fucked as us. I mean, there needs to be replanting of native ecosystems, right? So maybe choose oak trees that are native to North Carolina so that you can help repopulate over there and sell it to the government or to nonprofits or whatever that are looking to restore the land, or to landowners that want to buy crops to restore their land that just went down, right? Because they say they had a bunch of non-native stuff and now they're like looking over there, just how I told you the only things that survived in Altadena are like the oak trees that are native. I bet you a bunch of the native stuff in North Carolina is a lot of it hurt, but it's not completely destroyed. It'll come back. So people will realize this after every disaster and start planting more and more native. So you might want to focus on native oaks or different trees that can be grown on your farm and start putting that all over, the United States, right? So different ways to approach the oak tree for sure. I just think all around it's a really good tree, man. I mean, provides food, forage, all types of beneficial things, right? So let me talk to you about this next tree. Almost finished with the list of the trees that I have on the farm, and then I'll just mention a few that I think people should explore at the end. But the last tree that I have, or the last, I don't know, I got another tree actually. So I got blue eucalyptus, blue gum eucalyptus. And I know eucalyptus gets a lot of rap because it's fucking, highly flammable and all that. But here's my thing. I trim my eucalyptus so much because it's a fast growing tree and I give all that to the goats. So I have lots of different eucalyptuses that I tried bringing to the goats and they hated the majority of them. So all the giant big eucalyptuses that you see in California, the more common ones that have like that green leaf, they fucking hate them. They don't eat them. I have to mulch in place and like, I would bring truckloads of it and they would just look at it, stare at it, bite it a little bit and they'd be like, fuck that. But I noticed that I brought a truck one time of blue gum eucalyptus and they murdered it. They ate everything. And I'm like, oh man, so I'm going to find one. Found a little 5 gal. Lady was selling trees on the street. Find a little 5 gal for $20. And I'm like, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. Man, in 1.5 years, this tree is like 15 feet tall, bro. I mean, like I already had bought it at like 3 or 4 feet and it was like a little stick. It wasn't nothing, it was like one little baby stick trunk. And now it's like a giant tree and I planted it right in front of my goat corral because that way I could just trim it, give it to the goats, and they even like the bark. So I trim the bark, which is the most highly flammable part. And I mix a lot of that in with different mulches and stuff. So, if you manage your eucalyptus, it's not going to become a fire hazard. And it's an extremely fast growing tree that's drought tolerant. So I planted it where I needed the tree the most, right next to my goat corral. And the reason for that is that, it's an indoor outdoor pen. So I have concrete shelter that I built for them, and then they can go in that, right? And not be cold or affected by the wind or whatever. But I also have an outdoor portion. So, if I have to put them in for whatever reason, like, give them alfalfa or they have kids or whatever, 1,000 reasons. Um, they got the sun in the summer beating down on it. So that eucalyptus, I'm planning on trimming it to basically cover that pen, and I am going to be blowing the roofs, even though it's not such a big deal because if fire came to that eucalyptus, all the roofs are metal and it's all concrete. So, but my point is, I'm going to be everything from that eucalyptus that falls bark-wise and leaf-wise, blowing it off the roofs, and then they're going to be eating that. So that's a lot of the things that are combustible that people complain about eucalyptus. But if you highly manage it and you're using it for forage, great fucking tree, honestly. It's so amazing. Like I water it now just because it's like I love seeing it grow. And I'm sure the little water that I'm giving it is making it grow faster. But it's not necessary anymore. Literally after 1 year, it established itself. I went one time already 4 months without watering it. And I was like, this shit is growing, like I thought faster even because I stopped watering it. But then, my goat pen is right next to it, as I mentioned. So time to time when they have dirty water, I just throw it on there, like whatever shit water, like if water, for instance, like the goat's pooping in or whatever, I never let that water sit and then drink it. I'll take it out even if it's all clear, but it has poop, and I'll use that to throw on trees, and then I change all the animal waters every single day, and I throw all that water on trees. So, for instance, if you're just a rancher, you go outside your pen and you just throw that shit in the fucking ground because you're like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna change the water. But me, because I grow trees and agave cactus, I carry a bucket with me, and as I'm doing all the water changes, I throw all the dirty water into one bucket. And then that bucket, I'll fill it up halfway. And then the other half, I'll fill it up with water, just regular clean water. So it's not just poop water. And then that water, I'll throw it around trees and stuff. And it's basically just a fucking compost tea, that hasn't sat for so long. And yeah, like you know, that's how I use that water. But the eucalyptus tree is a really amazing tree. The blue eucalyptus, product wise, I see a lot of people using it in flower arrangements. I've sold some bundles for flower arrangements. I've sold some bundles of leaves for people making tea. I've sold some bundles of leaves for people that want to use it for aromatherapy. These aromatherapy people are like always trying to use different stuff I have. It's pretty cool. Like, I guess you can make essential oils, a wide array of products. I was not really aware, which is also interesting. Here's, this multi-purpose thing I was talking about earlier. If you buy a still to distill spirits, right, you can use that still to distill essential oils as well. So, you know, I'm thinking over here like, okay, I'm going to use my still to maybe make, some different prickly pear spirits and agave spirits or whatever I was telling you of different fruits. But I'm also going to use that still to use different, you know, stuff like creosote and the eucalyptus and anything that has leaves that are very aromatic to create essential oils. So, I mean, you can use even a lot of the fruit trees that have scents, their leaves for that stuff too, right? So the still is multi-purpose. There's a lot of different things you can make. Right now, when Corona happened, you can make, alcohol, like not to drink, but like hand sanitizers and stuff, right? So, there's a lot of different products that you can make just by modifying your still just a little bit. So the blue eucalyptus has lots of products that you can make. The seeds, people want these eucalyptus trees. A lot of people don't have money because they might be expensive trees. And then, most landscaping plants, I mean, are around that 5 gal, anywhere from 30 to $100. So, a eucalyptus tree, I've seen it in that range a lot, depending on what city it's in. And, people don't have a lot of money, so they want to buy the tree seeds and start them from seed, right? So before I didn't sell seeds, but this year I started selling a lot of seeds because I kept getting asked by the poorer individuals. Sorry for lack of description. How should I word it? Less fortunate financially, these people kept asking me, I don't have money to buy a $20 plant, but I have, you know, $10. Can I buy like, 300 seeds or whatever? And then I can, in a few years have a couple hundred trees that I started. And I was like, fuck yeah, you know what? I'm gonna start collecting seeds of everything now. So all of my plants that I sell, now I'm starting to collect the seed. I was propagating it before, but now I'm selling it too. And I'm finding that honestly, I'm making more money on the seed than a lot of the plants. So like for instance, I'll give you an example. If you harvest an agave, say for example, Vilmoriana, you might get 10,000 bulbs on it that say you sell at $2, $3 a pop, right? So you might make 20, 30 grand on it. That's pretty dope. The bulb agave, that might expand to Tequiliana, that might expand to Fort Croides, a lot of different bulbous agaves that you can make a lot of money on. But then if I sold that, say I didn't let it flower, I would probably only get a 20 pound pinion. There's no way I'll make fucking 20 grand off a fucking bottle of, or say it takes 10 pounds per bottles off 2, 3 bottles of Vilmoriana. There's no fucking way. You get me? But put it this way, say I was growing another agave like Agave Montana and I grow it out, I might only get, you know, I don't know exactly. I never weighed the pina that I got from these Montanas that I distilled or harvested and distilled, but it looked to me like around a 40 pound pina, right? So say that pina, I'm able to get like, I don't know, per pound, it's super niche, super great spirits. Say I'm able to get 5 or 10 bucks a pound, even, right? That's still only 400 bucks per the plant. You could sell a fucking 15-gallon agave Montana for 200 bucks at year 2 or 3, right? So don't just think about making money off of agave spirits, because most of the time the plant is going to make you more money. And what I was getting to is here with the agave Montana, the seeds, say you get 10,000 seeds, those 10,000 seeds, say you sell them for a quarter each, that's 2,500 bucks. That's way more than the spirits, than selling the plant, than planting and selling the plant, all those different avenues of selling the agave Montana, right? So each agave is going to be making you more money in spirits. Like, for instance, the tequiliana, nobody fucking gives a fuck about that agave. It's so common that you're not going to make a lot of money on the seed or the hijuelos, right? So you might want to use that one for spirits. But a lot of these other rare ones, go for the bulbs, go for the seed, plant them out for people. You're going to make a lot more money, right? I don't know how I got on that, but yeah, that's definitely pertinent to all of this. Oh, what I was talking about is just like, how I'm gonna use the eucalyptus seeds, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm noticing that the seed game is just, man, it's mad money in the seed game, bro. I didn't even know about the seed game. But now I know, shit. This year, I probably shipped out 300,000 cactus seeds. My goal for 2025 is to push 1 million agave seed and 1 million cactus seed. And I mean, we're only a week in, but so far so good. We're looks like we'll hit that. And like I'm mentioning, I mean, I'm making way more money on the seed than selling the plants now, and I sell a lot of plants. So I mean, I'm like, damn, what the hell? I need to. But see, here's the thing. I don't limit myself. I sell plants. I'll plant it for you. I'll fucking sell you it. If you want to make some spirits, I'll fucking sell the seed, the bulbs. I don't care, man. My goal for the farm is to make money, bro. I don't give, people always ask me, what are you going to use your agave for, this plant or that plant? I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Whoever pays the most price. And if they don't pay a good price, then I'll make my own product. I don't limit myself. You know what I mean? Like, and don't limit yourself with all these trees that you might want to plant, right? Like, look for different avenues to make money. So the last tree I want to mention is not really a forage tree or a fruit tree, but I have it on the farm, so I might as well mention it. So this tree here is a cypress tree, gigantic cypress tree. And it's not the Italian one. I don't know which one it is because I took it out of a landscape. It gets pretty bulky, you know what I mean? Whereas the Italian is like a straight cone, you know what I mean? So I know it's not Italian, but I also know it's not Italian because the Italian cypress here in LA, like all of them are plagued as fuck, full of spider webs and look like crap. So, you know, this is a much different one. The guy, when I took it out, told me it's like some super rare cypress. That's why I saved it, but I don't remember what it is. But it's a super dope tree. Maybe look for some cypresses that can take cold and heat, for you, which usually the majority of the family, because they're usually from cold ass mountains. And, the cypress tree, I just have it there because I could decorate it in Christmas. I cut a bunch of it up to give forage to the goats, but it grows not so fast, so that's rare. I also, what do you call it? Trimmed it up to 4 or 5 feet, so I have agave and cacti under it. So it provides a pretty good shade for them, but then it's also a pretty straight growing tree where it goes tall versus wide. So that tree in specific is really good for the protection of the plants just right under it, but not really so much like the other trees that I'm mentioning, that it spreads out and it provides a lot of aid to everything around it. But once again, the cypress trees are going to help with the water retention in your soil, much like most of the trees. They're going to help get rid of a lot of the erosion that's going. A lot of the cypress trees, because they are from mountainous territories like oak trees, they could take fire and be burned down, and you have a good rain and they'll come back. So you also don't want to plant a tree like, or too many of trees that don't have a chance in a fire, because then they all burn down, right? So if you're choosing, for instance, like a eucalyptus could take a fire and it'll come back. The oak trees, right? A lot of the trees I mentioned, especially if they're going to be natives, to an area that has a lot of fire are going to be able to take, that readily. Um, so those are the trees I have on the farm. I have a lot of more in greenhouses, but that list could probably be a fucking 100-hour podcast of why I have all those trees. I mean, I, if you notice, I just love plants. So, I mean, agave and cactus is like my heritage. That's why I'm exploring those families much more. But I'm really involved in permaculture and sustainable agriculture. So, and I'm an agricultural consultant for the majority being agave, cactus, and grapes. So, and in niche farms that are just getting started. So, I've learned a lot in college also by, studying environmental science and stuff. So, you know, I, I learned a lot of different plants that I want to explore their potential, right? So, a couple off the top of my head, the first one might be toyon bush, another plant that's native to California, eaten by the indigenous, already proven to be a really good crop, takes the cold, takes the heat, takes the wind, can be planted in mountain, in desert, in valleys, all that shit. Amazing fucking plant. What's the American shit for it? I mean, it's called toyon bush, but it's fucking, what do you call it? Something completely different. How they call it. I think it's called like holly bush or something stupid. I call it toyon bush because that's what the indigenous call it. Don't really care what some fucking random, researcher came and nicknamed it because they grew it for thousands of years and they're the reason we know that it's a valuable plant. So, it's kind of like the agave here. I was talking with one of my homies who's in a tribe here in California, and he's like, "Yeah, we call the agave a mule." And I'm like, "A mule? What the fuck?" He's like, "Yeah, that's the indigenous word for agave." And I'm like, "Damn, they got a whole ass word for it, huh? That means they've been using it forever." But the reason behind that I say that is try to respect the words that are being used by people that have been using this shit forever. You can use the Latin name to refer to it in scientific terms or when you're talking with scientific people, but just remember that the indigenous nicknames, I believe, hold precedent over everything, really. Yeah, I mean, another one that I'm also trying to get here that I have in the greenhouse is a couple of trees, acacias, mesquites. The acacias I just recently purchased. The mesquites I've had for a while. Those basically, like what I was telling you about Palo Verde, pretty much same story. Very fucking amazing trees. They have a lot of functions like the PV. See if I can think of some other ones that might help you that you could research. The pinon pine, that's another California native that's fucking amazing that gives edible pine nuts. And that also was a staple of the California indigenous. And, I've seen people incorporate them. Like, who did this? Shelter Distilling. They use some pinon pine nuts in some of their distills. And I thought that was fucking amazing. I mean, a lot of people probably didn't catch that. They're like, oh, a little whatever flavor. But I caught that. I caught that little California native touch. I love seeing that. I would love to see a pachuga one day of like, so you do California agave native Gacerti and Utaensis, or maybe Shawi, and then you might want to incorporate some native, prickly pear or some native pinon pine. I think that using the California native plants for a pachuga and using California native agave would just be like the ultimate fucking, damn. If you want to help me on that experiment, let's make it happen. Just don't tell nobody. Well, I guess, fuck, I just told everybody, huh? Well, once we figure that out, keep it on the down low. Whoever reaches out to me. But yeah, so the pinon pine. Let's see if I can think of another one. Oh, mimosa. Mimosa is another Southwest native that's fucking amazing. It's basically like the Palo Verde and mesquite and cassia. Gonna be very soil booster, forage, produce seeds that can be really helpful and edible and stuff. So, that one's a good one. I'm out in the desert, but if you're out in coastal California or in NorCal where it doesn't drop under 25 or 30, I would recommend moringa. Moringa's the most nutritious plant in the world, actually. A lot of people don't know that. But it has like 60 vitamins and minerals. Like It's insane. And then it's actually like more, if you eat a pound of moringa, it has more like I forget the exact amount. Don't quote me on it, but if I remember correctly, it has like some stupid amount, like 3 to 5 times more per pound of protein than beef. So it's like, how they always give vegetarians shit that they're always looking skinny and they don't eat protein and they're looking lanky. Well, not no more with moringa, man. If the vegetarians figure out moringa, they're gonna be fucking ripped. So if you're over on less cold areas of California, I would have a lot of moringa trees planted because another thing that people are just like overcharging for, you know what I mean? It's like $50 a pound for grinded up moringa. It's ridiculous. But is it worth it? Yeah. Do I have the money for it? No. So I grow it myself. Well, I did actually at my house. Shit's not there anymore. Moringa is one that I found out this week is not fire resistant. It will go down completely. You know what actually also made it? My grapefruit tree. So maybe plant some grapefruits. They're fucking resistant to the fire because a fucking hellstorm came through and, my, what do you call it? Dwarf navel orange, super cool tree where the oranges stay on all year. That didn't make it. All my guava trees, rare ass guavas, like the Thai guava, the fucking blue guava, like all those blue banana, all those fucking murked. So grapefruit might be a winner for you if you live in a fire prone area like I do. So yeah, those are just some other trees that I think might benefit you, but it's not an exhaustive list. I definitely recommend to you. This is just a primer. I want to just show you that there's a lot of potential for fucking. Oh my God, people are so dumb in fucking parking lots, dude. Over here in this parking lot trying to get past this lady. This lady almost fucking crashed me. I had to pause for a second to focus. People are wild over here in LA and Lancaster specifically, man. Everywhere you drive, you see a fucking cross like on every block. And if that shows you how crazy people are driving here, but I guess it's extended to parking lots. People lose their mind, don't know how to park. But yeah, I just arrived. I'm about to ship a bunch of plants out. So yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys couple different trees that can help you and use this as a primer to see how you can boost your silviculture and agroforestry system and agave and cactus farms. I'll catch y'all at another time. You got any questions on anything that I was talking about today or on any agave cactus topics want might you might want me to talk about, then let me know in the comments or send me a message. I'm Farming and Gardening California on Instagram, and I'm Agavero Californiano pretty much everywhere else, like Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest and all that. So hit me up, y'all. Have a good one. Hope you learned some shit today and you go plant some trees. Hopefully natives or fruiting or whatever you like. Have a good one. Catch y'all later. Peace out.